is the best elf at fighting in terms of arms? That is the subject of today's video. And yeah, we're going to do, I think, a top 5. Let's go for a top 5. Just a heads up, this is mostly going to be a talking head video. So there's not really a whole lot to look at here. So you can just minimize this if you want to just listen. Hello and welcome to the channel. This is Gone with Gandalf. Every single Friday we do these lore videos, so if you have any suggestions you can pop them down in the comment section below. And yeah, please subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content and do like the video. Also, I will just say apologies if the wind is loud. It's because it's windy outside. A couple of weeks ago I made a video detailing the differences between the different clans and rankings of the elves. So a natural progression of that is to rank the elves in terms of their martial prowess. I can't really do overall power because that would be too grand of a topic, and I think it really deserves its own video. And you know, martial prowess, it's quite easy to look at in terms of just who's best. There is going to be a slight criteria to this. You must be a Calaquendi and you must have seen the light of the two trees, and then, you know, you must have had some kind of great feat described in the Silmarillion. It's very hard to rank you in terms of martial prowess if no one actually has heard of what it is that you did. Number 5 then, we're going to go with Fingon, and he would be the High King of the Noldor in exile, and he was a warrior king and was involved in 4 of the first 5 battles of Beleriand. Fingon was one of the few that actually faced down a Balrog, and the Balrogs, they were Maiar spirits. That means that they were one of the Iron Order that had then fallen and gone off with Melkor into his rebellion against the Valar, and then chosen to take up the form of these demonic beasts. So yeah, they're very, very powerful, and only a few have ever survived an attack with them. And Fingon was in a one-on-one duel with none other than Gothmog. Gothmog was the captain, the high captain of the forces of Angband and the leader of all the Balrogs. And they were having a duel, and you know, who's to say how that would have ended? But actually, he was killed by Gothmog. But that is kind of because another Balrog came out of nowhere and kind of pinned him down so that Gothmog could come down with an axe right on his head. Now, that is also why Fingon is he's quite well known for his death. Because when he got plonked on the head on his helmet by the great axe of Gothmog, there was a white plume of flame that then ejected from his helmet. Now that's not like he wasn't made of, like he didn't have a gas cooker under his helmet. That was just how fierce his spirit, his fare was. But nonetheless, to face down a Balrog in single combat and, you know, hold your own, you got to be pretty good. And you know, he killed countless orcs, but orcs, you know, they're just rabble. But to be honest, it's the top 4 that are going to be really contentious, and you know, you could make a case for any one of these top 4 being number 1. But number 4, we're going to go with Glorfindel. Glorfindel, he is my number 4 pick. So Glorifindel, he was a Noldor elf, also of Aman. So, you know, he's Calaquendi, he's got that box ticked as well. In terms of feats of strength then, he held the rear guard during the retreat from the Nirnaeth Arnoediad for the Gondolindrum to make it back to their homes, so that's pretty cool. And then during the fall of Gondolin itself, again, during the retreat, he was able to smite down a Balrog, actually only dying himself because the falling Balrog actually grabbed hold of his hair and pulled him down into the rocky chasm along with him. His self-sacrifice, again, would probably prove as to why he was then chosen to be reacquainted with Middle-earth later in the Second Age. During the events of The Lord of the Rings, Glorfindel almost certainly is the greatest in terms of martial prowess of all elves in Middle-earth, just because he was pretty recently, in terms of the elves anyway, pretty recently in Aman. And also, you know, he's just got that glittery appearance of the Blessed Realm still upon him. But because that is Lord of the Rings and he's got these additional powers, I'm not going to add that in. Because during the Lord of the Rings, of course, his role isn't really to be a battle commander or anything like that. Number 3 then, we're gonna go with Feanor. Yes, I know, that's contentious, but Vernor, he is the most famous elf, probably. And also, probably the most powerful elf in, when you take everything into consideration, although there are a few that would contend with him on that subject, but again, that's for another video. But just because he's repeatedly said to be, you know, the best at everything, you'll have to forgive me for thinking that he is also the best at everything, because if Tolkien says he is, then perhaps he is. Needless to say, Fëanor was a Calaquendi. He'd seen the light of the two trees. In terms of heroic feats, well, I don't know about heroic, but certainly stupid. He'd marched way ahead of the vanguard of his force, and he was going straight for Thangorodrim because he wanted to go and take out Melkor as soon as possible. But he was so far ahead that no one could reach him in time before the Balrogs of Angband had been unleashed, and all his guard was slain, and it was just him against, well, we don't know how many, but plural Balrogs. Now, he didn't actually get outright killed during that time, so that's pretty cool. Quite commendable, really, to survive against so many, including Gothmog, the captain of Angband. I think if you can hold out so long against multiple Balrogs, then you're bound to be very good, even if you do get wrapped in and wreathed in flame and take many wounds in the process. So that's just testament to just how good he was in martial terms. But now we're getting into the real finer points. And number 2 then. Actually, before we reveal the top 2, let's have some honourable mentions, eh? So I mentioned him earlier, Turgon, the king of Gondolin, and, you know, later on to be the High King of all the Noldor in exile. He was similar to Fingon in the fact that he was also a warrior king. He wasn't afraid of leading from the front. This was seen in the Nirnaeth Arnoediad again. A lot of things happened in this battle, didn't they? And he hewed many orcs on his way to see his brother Fingon in the midst of the fighting. And ultimately, of him, actually, Morgoth's ruin did occur. Maedhros, the eldest son of Fëanor, he was pretty good with the sword as well. He only had one hand though, because one of them was cut off by Fingon in order to save him from Morgoth early on during their days in Middle-earth. Now, the reason why he's not on this list is because most of his killing was just due to, you know, killing rank-and-file orcs and whatnot. There was no tale of him going toe-to-toe with a Balrog or a dragon or anything like that. So it's hard to, you know, place him above any of these other people already on the list with their feats of strength. Eärendil, one of my favourite characters, he is an honourable mention. Now, he didn't see the light of the two trees, he's not from Aman, he's not even an elf, and that is predominantly why he's not on this list. Now, he is a half-elf, and he has been to Aman, and he was imbued with greater powers, including one of the Silmarillions, so it's kind of unfair really to add him to this list, but he did kill Ancalagon, who's that ginormous looking black dragon that you see in some YouTube videos where they show off the scale of different dragons from Lord of the Rings. You can go and have a look at those if you want, but I'm not going to talk about whether or not they're accurate, but it's a bit crazy really. But yeah, he's an honourable mention. Gil-galad, the last High King of the Noldor in exile, the son of Fingon actually, or Orodreth, depending on which genealogy you go with, but I think Fingon is the right one anyway. He was said to be very good with his spear, eyeglass, and none could withstand him with that, other than Sauron. But Sauron, of course, he was a Maiar. However, yes, he was of the line of the Calaquendi. He never saw the light of the two trees. That does immediately place him as lesser in just his being. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be very good martially, even if you've not seen the light of the two trees, but that kind of does seem to be the case in every aspect. Every single one that has seen the light of the two trees is better than those that have not. And well, he went up against the Maiar spirit, that being Sauron, which is perhaps similar to Gothmog, and he went down. So, you know, there we go. He's not as good as Fingon. So number 2 then on this list, we finally made it. Now, I did actually think quite hard about this, but then I was like, you know what, people are going to pick holes in this regardless of whichever one I chose, but I'm going to go with Ecthelion. And Ecthelion was of Gondolin, and he was the head of the House of the Fountain. Now, he killed so many orcs during the fall of Gondolin that it was said that it was equivalent to all the orcs that had been killed in previous battles between the elves and orcs. So I don't know, that's probably hyperbole, who's to say? But yeah, it was probably hyperbole. Now he also did some rearguard action similar to what Glorfindel did during the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, so that's pretty commendable, you know, self-sacrifice and all that. But something that he did, and this is again, this is like the biggest feat of strength almost going. He killed 3 Balrogs in addition to killing a 4th one, which was Gothmog, the lord of all Balrogs, the High Captain of Angband, and he did so by headbutting him because all his other limbs were already, you know, destroyed. That he didn't have a sword, didn't have a shield, all he had was his helmet, and his helmet had a very large spike on the top of it. So he headbutted Gothmog into the fountain and they both ended up drowning. So yeah, very heroic. Most other characters, they struggle to kill even 1 Balrog, and even if you look at someone like Gandalf the Grey, he killed Durin's Bane, but then also ultimately would die. So he killed 3, in addition to Gothmog, the High Captain, when he was pretty much out of order. And needless to say, he was also from Aman, he saw the light of the 2 trees, and yada yada, he's an Noldor elf. But number 1, you've probably already guessed who it's going to be. It's going to be Fingolfin, the younger half-brother of Feanor and the High King of the Noldor. And this guy was a real beast in combat. He was actually said to be the strongest of all elves. And, you know, the real reason why he's taking the number 1 spot is because of his duel with Morgoth. And the reason why I think that Fingolfin's duel with Morgoth is the greatest of all the feats of strength is because Morgoth is the highest of the high Valar, and Valar, they're above the Maiar, and all Balrogs are Maiar spirits. So he's already one-upping pretty much everyone else there. Not only that, you know, during the duel, Morgoth didn't want to come out there because he was probably a bit afraid. He's not very good at dueling, but nonetheless he kind of had to, as all his underlings would have totally lost respect for him. Morgoth was forever injured. 7 times he was actually cut by Ringil, the sword of Fingolfin, and he'd always have a limp. If there was ever a victory in defeat, I feel like this is one of those kinds of things. And I think it's pretty fair to say that Fingolfin thoroughly deserves to have the greatest honour and biggest feat of strength. And therefore, I feel like he is also the greatest in terms of martial prowess. So there we have it. That is my top 5 of the best elves in martial prowess rankings, with a few honourable mentions. Now, you are welcome to disagree with what I've said here, and to be honest, devil's advocate, I could disagree with myself as well. I could probably flip this the other way, almost. But if you do disagree, then do pop it down in the comments, because actually, you know, I'd welcome that discussion, and it's quite fun just to talk about these things, even if there's no real end in sight, because like you could never definitively say one is absolutely better than the other. I will probably follow this up with the top 5 most powerful elves at some point if it's deemed required. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe and all that jazz. But for now, I am going with Gandalf. Good day.